The code groups feature is used to make only certain codes available when coding sessions for certain students or staff members. For example, if a certain student is covered by a specific insurance and that insurance only accepts certain codes, then a code group could be used to make selecting the wrong code more difficult. When used correctly, code groups has the potential to reduce coding errors. Let's start by taking a look at an example of a code group in action. We are now looking at a new session form for a student that has no code groups associated to him. When I click the lookup to select a diagnosis code, all diagnosis codes in the system that are active are available to choose from. The same goes for adding procedures. When I click the lookup next to the procedure code section, all active procedure codes are available from the list. Now, let's cancel out of here and navigate back to the student record. If I scroll down on the student record, I'll locate the section named Student Code Groups. I'm going to go ahead and add a student code group for this particular student. Now that I've added a student code group, let's go back to the new session form we were looking at a moment ago. This time around, when I go to add a new procedure code and I click the lookup button, you'll notice that the list of procedure codes is limited to only specific procedure codes. Those are the procedure codes that are within the code group that I selected for that student. As you can see, I don't even have an option to select any codes outside of that code group. So with that example out of the way, let's show you how to set up your code groups. To get to the code group section, first click on the plus symbol within your navigation bar. Then click on the Code Setup section. Next, click on Code Groups. This will take you to a list of all existing code groups within your system. To create a new code group, click the New Code Group button at the top of the page. The first thing I'll do is give the code group a name. The Active checkbox can be unchecked down the road if you wish to discontinue use of this code group. The Allow All Modifiers checkbox means that for each procedure code that you select, any modifier code will be allowed for that procedure code. If unchecked, each procedure modifier combo must be added individually to the code group. The next thing I'll do is scroll down and add which procedure codes I want to be associated to this code group. Next, I can choose to include diagnosis codes within this code group as well. Keep in mind that you can create as many code groups as needed, so you can create code groups for procedure codes and a separate one for diagnosis codes if you wish. Furthermore, you can add multiple code groups for each student or staff member. If a student has multiple code groups associated to them, then all of the codes in all of the code groups associated will be available for selection on the session. For example, if a student has this particular code set available, then all of the T codes will be available for selection. Then let's say a second code group is created to allow just for the H codes, and that code is associated to the same student. Then when coding a session, you'll be able to choose from the H codes and the T codes because both code sets contain all of these codes. When you're done adding the appropriate codes to your code group, just hit save and repeat the process for any other code groups that you wish to create. The instructions for associating code groups to a student are easy. First, open up the student record, then scroll to the bottom to the Student Code Group section and press New Student Code Group. Next, select the code group. Optionally, you can also enter in a start and an end date. This means that the codes on the session would only be limited to this code group during that duration. Once I've completed the process, I'll hit the Save button, and I'll repeat the process for as many code groups as I want to add to this student record. Now, code groups can also be associated to staff members. To do this, you would go to the plus symbol, then click on the Staff Members section, then click on the appropriate staff member, and scroll to the bottom to locate the Staff Member Code Group section. Creating staff member code groups is the exact same process as creating student code groups. The difference is staff member code groups are used to restrict which diagnosis and procedure codes can be used on the session when the staff member is listed as the therapist. This would be useful if a certain staff member is only allowed to code certain codes when they render their services. This concludes our lesson on code groups.